You've probably heard me talk about a contract as a sort of relationship agreement in the past because it is between two parties, it is about trust, it is about a long-term relationship. So now we need to talk about the equivalent of a prenup. What happens when things go wrong? And in contractual terms, that's called a termination clause, a cancellation clause, that sort of thing. And strictly speaking, it doesn't terminate the contract as if it never existed. It doesn't snuff it out. What it does is stop future obligations under the contract. So this termination provision should make it clear when the parties can separate. That seems sensible enough to me. If trust goes, if competence is in question, if the project is no longer required, then you should be allowed to separate. Sort of quickie, no-fault divorce. So what do we do when we look at termination provisions? Well, the thing is, nobody really wants to envisage the demise of a wonderful project, something that they've thought about, tendered for, envisaged, wanted. Nobody really wants to focus on when it might no longer be required. But it's really important we do that. A contract gives a provider both the obligation to carry out the whole of the scope and a right to carry out the whole of the scope. So if we want to take that right away, if we want to cut it short, we need to work out how that's going to deal with and what the consequences are going to be. So I was looking at an appointment for a consultant on a specific project and came across a couple of things that I think you might want to look at when you're looking at contracts that you're sent. The first one is the dreaded termination at will clause. Now that's just jargon. It basically means that the client can end the contract at any point on notice. And this is a drafting in this agreement. It says, the employer may at its sole discretion and at any time terminate this agreement by giving 14 days written notice to the consultant. So they can end it at any time. So what? If you get paid, that's okay, isn't it? Well, it goes on to say that the employer will not be responsible to the consultant for any loss of profit, loss of contract, or other compensation arising out of termination of their appointment. Now, it could be that you structure your fees so that you get paid in advance, you front load your fees, that all your fees take into account profit, overhead, setup costs, lost tendering costs, and that kind of stuff. But it could be that they terminate your appointment before you've really been able to recover the costs of getting involved in this project. So be careful about allowing them a free right to terminate without compensating you for costs incurred and loss of profit on works that you don't do. The second thing that this contract had was a right to terminate for specific trigger events, the usual sort of things: insolvency, subcontracting out without consent, negligence, breach of a duty of skill and care, breach of various policies, that kind of thing. Now that's all very well, and it was also combined with a no compensation to the consultant. Well, that's fine. Consultants in breach is in default. Why would you compensate them? When we looked at it, what was missing was a right for the consultant to terminate for the client's failures. So if the client didn't give them access to the property they were meant to be surveying, nothing happened. If the client didn't pay any of their fees, nothing happening. If the client refused to pay further fees, nothing happening. Even if the client was insolvent, unable to pay its debts and therefore unable to pay any future fees, nothing doing. The contract was so one-sided that it only had rights for the client to do anything, nothing for the consultant. Now that's not right. We're not going to say that only men or only women or only one spouse or partner in a relationship can divorce and the other one not. So the one with the first name closest to the beginning of the alphabet, or the oldest or the youngest, or the one with the bluest eyes, I don't know, choose some random category. That's pretty much what this is saying, that only the one called the employer has any rights. Now that's not a way to build trust, to enhance trust, to keep a client or consultant engaged in this process. It's not collaborative, it's not mutual, it's not supportive. If you recognise that both parties might want to leave because it's turned into turf warfare, then you should provide a roadmap for both parties to solve this intractable problem. So please make sure your termination provisions are fair, include compensation where it's at no fault, and balanced. Your contracts can safeguard your business without annoying your clients, but only if you focus on the terms that really matter